Hi everyone. In this lesson, we are going to continue learning about the Myers-Briggs personality coding, but specifically, we're going to be looking at other people. So far in our understanding, we've been focused mostly on ourselves. We've been looking at our own personality and how we are going to make choices in our own lives based on our personality. But now we're going to start looking at your interactions with the world. So one of the most beneficial reasons to understand the Myers-Briggs formula is to help you in those interactions with the world. So when you are having difficult conversations, when you're having conflict, or when you are a boss and you're trying to motivate your staff, if you know their Myers-Briggs personality codes, then it's going to be much easier for you to really, in essence, manipulate, even though that seemed as a bad word, but help control the situation and make sure that the outcomes comes out the best way possible for you. So I have an example for you that we're going to look at together to go through this. So the Waterloo Region District School Board announced this summer that they were going to suspend the School Resource Officer program. So the School Resource Officer program had police officers inside high schools, and we actually had one at Jacob Hespeler. And this summer that they announced that they are going to stop that program for now, and they're going to do a full review this fall to decide if it should start again or if it should stay off. Okay. The main reason for suspending it was there was a lot of backlash from the Black communities in our region saying that Black students specifically, as well as other colored minorities, were being targeted by these programs, and it was making school an unsafe place and an unwelcome place for them, and among other reasons. Okay, when this announcement of it being suspended happened, there was huge backlash on social media. Okay, there was a number of very, very vocal people absolutely livid or angry about this problem. And a number of those people, their response would generally that they would quote one or two good things about the program. So one parent, for example, said like, oh, this teacher or this police officer came into my student's law class and taught them lots of things, and it was really, really beneficial for them, and I don't understand why it would stop. Okay. A lot of the responses that came from these comments, people automatically were saying, you know, you're racist. How can you not care about how the other students are feeling? Why do you only think of your own students? Okay, so there was a lot of tension and there was a lot of conflict, okay? But what we're going to look at is if this was you in this situation and we were trying to convince someone of what was right, how would we actually go about doing that in a way that's productive as opposed to a way that just creates more conflict and more division between people and their beliefs. Okay, so one of the people that was very, very angry about this program ending is somebody that I actually know through a connection. And through that connection, I was able to get their Myers-Briggs personality. So they are defined as an ESTJ. And so that's the coding that we are going to be looking at today. A few caveats that I want to say. Your Myers-Briggs coding, okay, isn't the be-all and end-all of who you are. There can be two people with the same codes. There's actually 4 people in this class that have the same code, and that doesn't mean they're the exact same person. So I'm not saying that all ESTJs would have had the exact same reaction as this particular person, but we can look at their personality as an ESTJ and see how we can set ourselves up to be the most successful at trying to convince them of our point of view. Okay. Also, just because they are an ESTJ and that these are some of their natural responses doesn't mean that there aren't other things going on. Like, it doesn't mean that they aren't honestly racist and that's their main motivation behind it. Again, using personalities is just setting yourself up to be as successful as possible. It doesn't guarantee success. So let's take a look at it. ESTJ. So our first coding is an extrovert. Next, we have sensing, thinking, and judging. So if we are thinking about changing this person's mind, this person has come out, they're mad that this program's ending. They have quoted that this program did a great thing for their particular child, and they don't see why it needs to end. If we're going to engage in some sort of conversation or exchange with them, how are we going to be successful? The first thing that we have to note is that they are an extrovert. Okay, so this means that they thrive on and do well in lots of external stimulus, like public settings. So this would be why this person has taken to social media with this topic. They want other people to hear about it, okay? Knowing that they do well in that environment, okay, you might want to look at yourself to know if that's a good place to engage back with them. I would also note that generally extroverts, while they like large social settings, they're not going to like being proven wrong in a large social setting. Nobody really is, okay? And so if we're going to try to say, like, we want you to think of some other points of view and possibly change yours, doing that in a large public setting might not be the best forum for it, because they might just dig in their heels and not want to listen, okay? So I'm just going to start adding some notes here for ourselves. So knowing that they are an extrovert, we know they will do well publicly, but might not want to be proven wrong. So maybe a private conversation is ideal. Okay. We also know that as extroverts, they're generally going to be a bit quicker to the point. They're always going to be able to come up with a comeback very quickly. So we want to make sure, especially if that's not our own personality, that we are prepared for that. Okay. Again, we want to prepare for all possible comebacks so we can also respond quickly. Okay. So again, thinking about the where and the how that we're actually going to be doing this is really, really important, okay? And it just depends on who they are and what the conversation is. We know for sure if it's an introvert, we don't want to do it publicly, okay? But we also know that if it's an introvert, we might want to give them a little bit of information and give them time to process it before we have a conversation with them. Okay, so do you see the difference here? We're going into this going, you know what, they're going to be happy to have this conversation and go, 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 go. So we need to be prepared for that. If we were facing an introvert, we might say, you know what, I'm going to text them this news article. I'm going to text them this fact. I'm going to let them think about it. And then we're going to have a conversation later once they've been able to process it. Okay, so do you kind of see the difference of how you're going to handle that? Okay, the next one that we are going to look at is going to be sensing. Okay. Generally, our sensors, they live in the now and they enjoy facts. They're not looking for deeper meaning or long-term or anything like that. They're living in the now and they're looking for facts. So this kind of goes into the concept of, you know, them saying, oh, my child benefited from this, so what's so wrong with it? Okay. And so we need to respond in a similar way, going to them and talking about, you know, maybe long-term damages that this does to someone's mental health or different things like that. That just might not be something, I'm not saying don't do it at all, but it just might not be that main thing that appeals to them. So when you're working through something like this, thinking about who they are, okay, they enjoy facts and they live in the now. So why don't we give them some of those things? Okay, so we're going to try to find some facts to back up what we're talking about. We're going to find relevant, so new. So we don't want to talk about a student from 20 years ago. We want to talk about somebody now. Relevant examples and other stories, okay, of other experiences. Okay, they deal with the information that is in front of them. The information that is in front of them is their one child and a positive experience. So they may just not know that there's other things going on. They probably didn't sit and mull over and think about what this experience would be like for somebody else. That's not in their nature. So let's give them that information. Let's give them other stories of other experiences, relevant facts. We don't need huge, long sob stories. We just need other examples, other details, other negative interactions that they've had. Okay. And again, that would be different if they were an intuition. Okay. So we're focusing on what they are and then what they're going to get out of the information that we present to them. Again, sensing and intuition has to do with what that person, how that person will interpret the information that you present to them. So you need to keep that in mind with the information that you choose. Okay, the next criteria here is thinking, not feeling. Okay, so we know that this person deals with data. Okay, they want information in front of them. They generally by nature are not looking so much at how things make other people feel, and they may not be able to relate to the fact that just having a police officer standing there doing nothing, even possibly with a smile on their face, might have cause an emotional reaction or harm to some students that come into the building. That's not something that's going to appeal to them. And so we need to find other things, okay? So we want to find facts. We want to find examples of negative incidents. Okay, we maybe want to go find other examples of where this worked. Okay, thinkers like to see an end result. Okay, so let's look at other schools and other situations where they took these officers out or they've never had them and the schools are still safe. Okay, so you want to have facts for them, and you want to think about possible things that they're going to come back. Okay, so you may present it and say this is bad, and they may say, okay, I maybe get that, but what about all the good they do? What about how are we going to keep students safe instead? They're going to come back at you with the what ifs, and whether that's okay or not, whether that's really up to you to answer, knowing that that's going to happen and thinking ahead about an example or a response to that could be helpful. Here's a situation where they don't have them and it works fine. Here's another situation where they have them and it works just fine. Here's some other possibilities that experts in the field have talked about. Okay, let's find experts. Okay, they're going to likely respect experts on their opinions. Okay. Again, this would be a very different approach that you would have with a feeler. If you have someone that's a feeler, you want to get personal. You want to focus, on one or two stories and have that person, if you can, or tell it for them, have them tell a story. Long term, what are the effects? How did this make them feel? How did this affect their lives? Okay, that's not what we're doing with a thinker because somebody is different there. Okay, and then finally with our judging and our perceiving, okay, we know that judgers like organization, they like timelines. Okay, so we want to make sure that our argument is organized. Okay, we don't want to be kind of jumping all over with facts or different things like that. We want to have a very logical approach. Here is this, here is this, here is this. This is how it can be interpreted. Okay. Now, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't have organized arguments for perceivers as well, but just understanding that the way that they process the information, they're okay with more uncertainty, okay? And so the other thing that we know about our judges is they're not so good with uncertainty. So we need to look for those solutions, okay? We mentioned it already with it being a thinker, but even if you had a feeler and a judger, we would still, with that judging, we still need to look for possible solutions, okay? What could be done instead? What were success stories? Because judges aren't going to do okay with uncertainty. Okay. Also, maybe having an understanding of at least giving them the timeline of when the decision will be made. Okay. If you want to argue against it, you can go to this town hall meeting on this day. You can do this. You can do that. Okay. So this would be an example of how we would prepare to have a conversation or convince somebody of something that maybe they don't currently believe in or currently understand based on their personality. And as I've shown you throughout, we would do that differently if somebody had a different personality. In general, you can use this as a bit of a cautionary warning tale about having those interactions on social media because we don't know people and so we don't know how to approach them. But if you do know somebody, if you've had an argument in the past with somebody, if you have continued conflict with someone, if you don't understand why they can't understand something that's important to you, this could be an exercise that you could do that's very important. So that's an example for you. Okay, so at this point, you can jump back to your playlist. Okay, and you are going to find your activity for today. And I'm going to ask you to do exactly what I have just done in this lesson. Okay, so I've given you the situation at the top here. You are trying to convince three people that they should get the COVID vaccine. Or if you personally feel strongly that people should not get the COVID vaccine, you can go ahead trying to convince them to not get the COVID vaccine. Okay, but this is a controversial issue that's going on right now that people are not agreeing on, and so that is why it has been chosen. Okay, it says below I have given you each person's Myers-Briggs indicator. So this is your first person, your second person is Miss Wiggins, and your third is myself, and you can see our Myers-Briggs codes there. Okay, next to each of them, you are going to include or plan out your argument. So I don't need you to type out word for word what that argument will do. I'm asking you to plan out how you're going to do that argument exactly like I just did in the slideshow. So knowing person one is an extrovert, what are you going to do? Where are you going to have that conversation? How are you going to approach that? And then when you talk to Miss Wiggins, who is a fairly strong introvert, how might that be different? And then when you're talking to myself as an introvert, how might that approach happen as well? Okay, that you'll then move on to this person is a sensing. Okay, I'm a sensing, and Miss Wiggins is an intuition. So what about your planning for this is going to be affected by those factors. So for each of the 4 factors, you are going to go about telling us how you're going to plan out how to have this argument to hopefully be successful and to convince us of your point. Okay, so you can go ahead and do that now.